Hello Bookish friends, welcome to my July wrap-up part 1. In this video, I will talk about the 8 works that I finished and one book that I DNF'd in the first half of July. Like I did in my previous wrap-ups, I will insert the clips that I've recorded very soon after I finish those works. Today is the 1st of July and in the first day of the week and the month, I finished the first work that I was reading for Jane Austen July, which was 101 Amazing Facts by Goldstein and Isabelle Reese. After I talked about this book in my TBR, I realized that I had already read this book. But since it was too short, I thought, why not reread it? My feelings about this book did not change. It was a really list of facts about Jane Austen's life, works, and also her influence on the popular culture. Not all of the facts were amazing, but I think the work did what it was promised and gave quite a lot of information about Jane Austen at first glance. If I have time, I'm planning to read another book about Jane Austen's time, but even this reread satisfied my desire to read anything related to Jane Austen. So I gave 101 Amazing Facts by Goldstein and Isabelle Reese a 7 out of 10. Today is the 5th of July and I finished the second book of the month, which was the book that I was buddy reading with Amy at Sobek. We read the 10th book in Love Stakes series. In this book, titled Vampire Mine, we follow the love story between Muriel, an angel of death, punished for not obeying orders and becoming a very beautiful human being, and Connor, a very cross and moody Scottish vampire who has skeletons hidden in his past. Connor, being very much awed by this angel's goodness and purity, promises himself that he would help return this angel of death to heaven, but their attraction to each other makes it really hard for them to separate. Although this book expanded the paranormal world, it was my least favorite in the series. I also actually found the big battle scene in the end the best among the series. There were some side plots which were shocking and actually quite intriguing. However, the couple's interactions were not romantic enough for me, and in some scenes the way they blamed themselves all the time and preferred to be miserable most of the time really irritated me. Like all of our buddy reads, I very much enjoyed our buddy reading experience with Amy. I cannot wait to read the remaining books in the series because we are clearly heading to new plots, including some of our favorite side characters. Overall, I gave Vampire Mine by Kerrelyn Sparks a 6 out of 10. It is the 6th of July and I DNF'd a short story collection that I was reading for Read Your Shelf Challenge, which was The Sleepy Hollow and Other Stories by Washington Irving. I of course know about the legend of Sleepy Hollow. However, I have not read any work from Irving before, and unfortunately I could not finish this work by him because I did not write his writing style. First of all, I have to make clear that the collection that I was reading was not a short story collection. It was the collection of many things written by Irving. Some of them were non-fiction essays, some of them were most probably magazine or newspaper articles, as well as a couple of short stories that I have read before DNFing the book. I found the writing style of Irving very dry, especially his non-fiction work very boring. However, because I read the first short story that he wrote, which was Rip Van Winkle, I will count that short story as read and use it for the prompt of something written by a contemporary of Jane Austen for janeaustenjuly. And in this short story, Rip Van Winkle sleeps for a very long time before the Independence War and wakes up soon after the war is over and everything has changed. I've also found the writing of Irving quite dry. The plot was interesting and the chosen time difference was also very significant. The history of his newborn nation. Although the characters could have been a bit more dimensional, it was the best work in the collection that I've read. And I gave Rip Van Winkle by Washington Irving a 6 out of 10. Today is the 9th of July and I finished 2 works today. The first book that I finished was 4 Gün 3 Gece by Ayşe Kulin, one of my favorite Turkish authors. This was a surprise addition to my TBR because my aunt lent to me and she said that she wanted us to read it as soon as possible. This book takes place in the 4 days that the military coup in Turkey took place in 1960, between the dates of 24th of May and 28th of May. And we follow Sevda, a woman in her early 50s. She's married to one of the parliament members in the leading party. And her husband is out of the country for a foreign state affair. Sevda finds a very young man who has been injured in the student protests by the police forces. She decides to help this young man by treating his wounds, and with the background of all of the things happening in the country, her life changes permanently in those 4 days and 3 nights. This book was a very typical 7 out of 10 book for me. I like the way Ayşe Kulin writes, no matter what she writes about. The political background and the social aspect of this book was very effective and quite impressive in my opinion. However, with the exception of one side character, I thought the characters were not likable or believable in my opinion. So even though I never felt bored while reading this quite short book, I didn't feel a connection with our main character, Sevda. So that was why this book was a 7 out of 10 book for me. And the very short work that I finished was a collection of letters by Jane Austen. This very short work contains 5 fictional letters written by a teenage Jane and sent to her cousin for entertainment purposes, most probably, because the letters were quite witty. It was a very good indication of how Jane Austen constructs her witty scenes in the social background of her plots and love stories. I actually quite enjoyed reading this short work, so I also gave a collection of letters by Jane Austen a 7 out of 10. Today is the 12th of July and I finished the audiobook that I was listening for a while, which was the Turkish translation of Pride and Prejudice, titled Gurur ve Önyargı. In the Regency England, the Bennet family has 5 daughters, and Mrs. Bennet wants each of their daughters to get married as soon as possible. And when an eligible bachelor comes to town, she wishes that this gentleman, Mr. Bingley, will fall for one of her daughters. Mr. Bingley brings a friend with him who is more good-looking and richer than him, Mr. Darcy, but he's certainly not polite and looks down at the people in the town. And Elizabeth especially hugely dislikes Mr. Darcy at first sight. I think this was the 4th time that I'm reading this book. And I really wanted to listen to the Turkish version to see if the words of Jane Austen will be as effective in my native language as well. I was very glad to observe that they were. And I also really loved the narration done by Deniz Yüce Başarır. The romance in Pride and Prejudice is my second favorite romance in Jane Austen books, and I think it is done quite well. And I really do remember many details about the romance because I read the book 3 times and watched so many adaptations and retellings of the story. So this time I wanted to focus on the side characters. My main focus was on Charlotte Lucas, who seems to be a very complex character. And her thoughts and observations are actually very accurate. And to be honest, she knows what she wants, and she becomes moderately happy in the end. And I definitely agree with Naomi in her video, in which she talked about how right Charlotte Lucas was in Pride and Prejudice. The second character that I focused on was Jane. Most of the time, I dislike so perfect characters, but she was so innocent and so optimistic. It was impossible not to like her. It was a great reread again. So I gave Gurur ve Önyargı, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen a 10 out of 10. Today is the 14th of July, and I finished 2 quite short books back to back. The first book that I finished was the 10th book in Nancy Drew's series, The Password to Larkspur Lane. In this book, Nancy tries to solve 2 seemingly unconnected mysteries, which includes messaging by pigeons, kidnapping of elderly women, seemingly supernatural blue lights, and many references to different kind of flowers and everything else. The events that she endures are all action events, and Bess, George, Ned, and her other friends are there to help her to solve the mystery. This was the last book that we will read for the Nancy Drew read along, hosted by Mitzi. I plan to continue with the series. They are quick and easy read. The action makes it quite enjoyable to read, although the mystery is of course very basic. However, maybe reading them one each month made it a bit repetitive. So I plan to read one in 2 months or 3 months. I liked this book more than the previous books because I thought in that one she was putting herself into other people's private lives without being asked. But this time she was being asked to solve the mystery, and also, although by coincidence, many of the events happened in her own surroundings. My favorite part about these books is the friendship between Nancy, Bess, and George. I also quite like Ned's always supportive attitude, which seems to be a very novel thing, considering that this book was written in 1930s. So overall, I gave Password to Larkspur Lane by Carolyn Keene a 7 out of 10. The second very short book that I finished was Tembellik Hakkı by Paul LaFargue. This French book was translated to English as The Right to be Lazy. In this non-fiction book, written by the son-in-law of the leader of the Marxist discourse, Karl Marx, talks about the evil of working so many hours, and claims that it is a right to be lazy and just work 3 hours a day, which seems to be the ideal working hours for him. He very much criticizes actually the labor class for this one, because he thinks this class deliberately made themselves work so hard. This was a really interesting read for me. Although I agreed that the conditions in the end of 19th century were horrendous for workers, I believe in working and producing something to have a sound mind, also to have a meaningful life. And therefore I found some of his claims to be unreasonable. He thinks that the Marxist movement would bring the right to be lazy. Seems a very big contrast to the actual implementation of the socialist movement. I gave Tembellik Hakkı, The Right to be Lazy by Paul LaFargue, a 6 out of 10. So those were the 8 works that I finished and 1 book that I DNF'd in the first half of July. Please comment down below, have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, and what did you think of them? If you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, I'm going to choose lazy. Lazy means tembel in Turkish, and tembel is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.